Few things are for sure in this life, but this is. If we live for any substantial amount of time, we will encounter grief due to the loss of a loved one. Not something any of us ever want, and we all handle it differently. This podcast is to feature those who have done purposeful and meaningful things through their grief. These people featured on here are normal folks, just like you and me, who were thrust into a place they never wanted to be in their lives. A painful place. As they moved through their pain, they realized that something worthwhile, something for the greater good, could come out of the unthinkable. I'm sure that none of them would ever consider themselves to be a hero, but when I searched the definition of the word hero, I found this: a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. And that fit. And so it's my privilege to bring you the remarkable stories of these heroes in grief. Hi, everyone. This is Tom, your host for the Heroes in Grief podcast, and the response has been incredible so far, and I want to thank you for that. It's getting out to people, and they're letting us know that it's helping them, and that is what it's all about. I want to make you aware of a way that you can support this podcast without having to spend 1 cent, and that is through affiliate marketing. I've set up affiliate marketing for online shopping. If you do online shopping, then I have links to all the major retailers, most of them anyways, and I can provide them for you so that when you buy online through those links, you'll help support the podcast through the percentages that we get. It doesn't cost you anything more. You just shop like you regularly would on the sites that you love. It's very easy. All you have to do is shop. And that's it. Just let me know the links to the places that you want to shop at, and I will provide the affiliate links so that you can do it. If you want more information on this, you can go to heroesandgrief.com. It takes you to the Linktree page where a video explains it in a little more detail. But you can always email me at tom@heroesandgrief.com, and I can answer questions for you. But you can support the podcast that way, and it's very easy, very simple, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Isn't that great? Thank you. Now here's today's episode. Hey, welcome everybody to Heroes in Grief today. Thank you for joining me and my guest, Karen Bulinski Mathison. And we're going to hear all about Karen in just a minute. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether you tune in on YouTube or on the audio versions. And if you could help out the podcast just by subscribing and rating, whatever you can do on there, all of that activity helps the podcast to get out more. And the idea about the podcast is just to get it to people who can use it and may need it in their grief journey and their grief and loss journey. So that's what it's all about, and that's what helps it. So you can easily do that. That's not a problem, or share it and that type of stuff too. But check out everything. It's always in the show notes, any links to anything you need in there too. So today I have Karen Bulinski Mathison with me, and Karen and I were connected through her cousin, actually. Karen is a native Western New Yorker where I live. And also I am friends with her cousin. And she eventually told me about Karen, but she knew what I was doing long before she ever introduced me to you, Karen. So it was amazing. And then to read up on your journey, because it's similar to mine, where you were involved in some of the things that involved grief work and things. And then you had the impactful life situations that happened in your life too. And so that's very similar to a journey that I had. So first of all, welcome, Karen. Thank you for coming on the program. It really is nice to have you here. And I want to tell everyone before we even get into things, you can look up Karen's site. It's thenakedgrief.com. Okay, thenakedgrief.com. Look there and you can start looking at all the resources that we're going to talk about on there. Karen, thanks a lot for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. You're right. It's interesting how our circles kind of connect in several different ways. I love that we've got the Niagara Falls background though. That's really cool to me.
Yeah.
So where do I start? Do I start like decades ago?
Yeah, well, I mean, you were in things beforehand, right? So what were you doing before you had your personal grief events happen that really put an impact on you and then led you to forming the Naked Grief and everything? You were educated, you were you are mental health and wellness. You have a master's in mental health and wellness. And so you got some of the grief work started during that, right?
Actually, that was mostly after loss. So
Oh,
I was in a bubble for a really long time. I haven't told this lengthy story in a while, so bear with me, folks. So I was in a bubble for a long time. I was one of those people that was blessed to not really have loss. In 2000, I lost three grandparents. I was
ugh,
27. So for my
mhm.
first exposure to loss, to be an adult and to recognize how fortunate I was to have had 27 years with my grandparents is pretty powerful. Um,
Yeah.
I had lost some friends along the way, but not that core circle. Anyhow, my mom's father passed in January of 2000. And when I gave his eulogy, my dad's father came up to me and said, "That was amazing. Can you do the same thing for me?" And I kind of
Oh,
chuckled. I was like, "He was so much older than you. We've got lots of time. You can help me write it." And 2 months later, he was diagnosed with cancer and he was gone by July.
oh,
Um,
wow.
he was a triple Purple Heart vet, and I was living in Maryland at the time, so it wasn't like I could just drive over to him and go, "Okay, Grandpa, let's do this." So he was a triple Purple Heart vet, and there was a little resistance within the family about the comfort level of me speaking at the church for his eulogy. And I was kind of adamant for the first time. I kind of stood my ground and I was like, this was one of his last wishes to me. I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. So I was nervous knowing that like some of the family was a little uneasy. I'm standing up there shaking and a ladybug landed on the paper and it made me stand a little taller. I smiled a little brighter and went, okay, I can get through this. And I pushed through no problem. Well, we go graveside for the 21 gun salute. Three ladybugs are flying all around me. And I mean, I made the connection, but I didn't really overly think it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So fast forward to that first Christmas without all of the grandparents. Well, we're down to just one now. And my family and I moved, or me, I was single, my bad. Um, I go over to my mom and dad's and I start seeing ladybugs everywhere. And it's Christmas. Ladybugs don't come out in the wintertime.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started to make this connection and I spent years trying to figure out how to create a story to show the relationship between a grandfather and a granddaughter. The trouble is, though, my connection was stronger after loss than while he was alive because the last 10, 15 years of my life, I was doing my own thing. I was in school. I was chasing boys. I was just being a teenager and a young adult. So the connection wasn't wasn't there. So I'm trying to write this story and couldn't figure out how to make it powerful enough. And then one day I was driving home from work. I was working at a bank and it was like somebody was just tapping me hard on the shoulder and said, "Just keep it simple already." And suddenly it just hit me. "Ladybug, ladybug, why are you here? Your grandpa, he sent me to tell you he's near. Although you can't see him, he's with you right now. Think of him when you see me around." Short, simple, light. It creates connection, gives you hope, and hope the ladybug was born. And that was
Oh,
in 2012. And then I started writing all kinds of other poems that was connecting different creatures to people. It didn't mean that that was your sign. Like a ladybug is not always going to be grandpa, but it's to make
mhm.
people kind of think outside the box because those moments that we're in the car and their favorite song comes on, we can think of it as just a moment of sadness, or we can think of it as a way of them reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm still with you." It's all on how we want to open that perception. And that's where my true beginning began, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
it actually caused me to struggle at the bank because I wanted to do more. I wanted to do more for the people that I was helping financially, but then I also was starting to want to connect people more spiritually, and I couldn't figure out how to do that. So I left the bank and I went into life insurance. Well, that was a very short-lived career, but it connected
It's
me.
not exactly spiritual.
Well, it connected me
Just kidding.
to Camp Aaron and the other bereavement camps and what hospice workers truly do, and
Wow.
all these other
Yeah.
things, because I go in to grab brochures from their back office and went, oh, look at all this stuff that they do after loss that I wasn't aware of. This could help with what I'm doing. I could do this and I could help them with this. And I started, like, my mind just started to spiral. And then one day I was on a way to a meeting and I passed by a cemetery that had a now hiring sign. And I went, that's where I need to go, because I need to know if what I'm creating actually makes sense to the people that are in the trenches at that immediate loss moment. Can I give
Mhm.
them the hope that they need? Can I help them create the connection and fill the gaps where funeral homes and cemeteries leave off, so that they don't feel like they're just drowning in the deep end of the pool and don't feel like there's a support system out there? So that was 2015. And thought I had some kind of good foundation at that point. I was feeling pretty good about it, to be honest with you. I named the company Book Bugs. Hope was my lead focus, the ladybug, and it was how I was going to pursue things. And I was meeting with families and I was making my own little copies of my book and handing it to them while I was meeting with them to give them some hope. I connected with families long after assisting with burials and such, because they saw my passion and that I really had a heart in this. And then unexpectedly, I lost my husband in 2018. He went
Mm.
out the door on a Monday and he had a brain aneurysm while he was gone. And he spent 3 weeks in the hospital fighting for his life and waiting for the brain to stop swelling so they could determine how much damage was there. And then we lost him. And my kids were 7 and 11. And all of a sudden, what I was trying to do for people changed a lot, because now I'm in it. Like I said, I was in a bubble for a really long time. So having that compassion and empathy is one thing. But when you start to experience it on your own, the story changes. What you need changes. Learning how support systems, because we're not trained to know how to show up for people when they lose somebody unless we've been there. And then we know, okay, give them space, keep reaching out, don't suffocate, but let them know you're there. Like, it's a dance we got to do, and we've got to
Yeah.
be willing to show up for them all the time. And I watched how that changed firsthand. And we lost most of his friends pretty quick, and family dynamics changed and everything else. And then and then while my husband was in the hospital, though, my dad went to his doctor and said, my 40-year-old son-in-law just had a brain aneurysm. And his doctor said, hey, you know what? Those are preventable. Let's do a full workup on you, and anything that we can control, we'll take care of. While my husband was still dying, my dad found out he had brain and lung cancer with no symptoms. Had this
Oh.
not happened to my husband, my father would have been gone within 6 months because he had no symptoms. He immediately
Oh.
started treatments. He was with us until December 21st, 2022, when we went on a birthday Christmas cruise for my 50th birthday. My birthday's on Christmas, by the way. We docked in Nassau on the 21st. We had breakfast together. He went down to rest and never got up. Um,
Oh my gosh.
the cruise line was nice enough to keep him on the
Oh.
ship. Um, it was a shock. It was hard. You never want to imagine somebody passing on a vacation,
Yeah.
let alone right around the holidays, and Christmas was his favorite holiday. Um, but you also look for the good, right? So the upside was we had 5 days. It was an 8-day cruise. We had 5 days on that ship to not have to tell our story to anybody, and to bond as a now unit of 4 instead of 5, to restructure and come together and figure out what our next leg was going to look like. So, sometimes time can be a nice gift. And when you're remote like that and the internet is not something that you're really actively using, I made like 2 phone calls to make the communities that we were a big part of aware. And then after that, it was okay. Now I'm not going to check social media. I'm not going to do anything. We're just going to be together. And that's so in between the loss of my dad and the loss of my husband was when I started going back to school and decided I've lived it. I've had the passion for it. I've worked it. I need the degree with it. And then after my dad passed was when I got my death doula certificate and the art therapy piece was taken care of for coaching. It's not art therapy counseling. Let me be clear on that. Um, but I wanted that whole circumference like I wanted
Hmm.
all of it to come together and just to make sense so that I could speak both personally, professionally, and not a grief educator like you, but maybe even educationally because of the fact that it is a story and it's all different. And then last March, the last man that I loved passed. So and that was extremely unexpectedly. There were no delays with that. So I've seen the anticipatory, I've seen the sudden and unexpected. I've had a lot of different connections in loss. The ones you expect, like the grandparents, because that's the order of things, so to speak.
Right.
And then the ones that you don't expect your husband at 40 to just be gone.
Yeah. Well, what a unique thing on the cruise ship. I mean, that is, and yes, I mean, you probably could write a book out of just that experience, right? Of processing grief, and you're in an element of celebration, and all the all the contrast there and everything, and then like you said, the bonding the opportunity that you had, and wow, that is very unique. Have you ever thought about expanding on that and that whole experience there, or have you?
I kind of talk about it in the membership circles and some of the weekly content. Like and I think I've even hinted at it in some of the podcasts that we do. Um cuz I actually saw how the grief reaction manifests physically. Like my mom we decided we were going to go swimming because we weren't ready to get off the ship, and we talked and we were like dad would be really upset with us to be on this ship on vacation and sit and sulk in the cabin all day. So
Yeah.
let's at least go in the pool. And I watched my mom, like her whole body just buckled and she almost fell and and she really lost her balance for days until she found her footing again, physically and like I mean, literally and figuratively. Like it's amazing. And I watched it happen again recently when her best friend passed. It's the way her body processes it. The
Hmm.
way we all react and respond is all different. What we need is all different. But when you can see firsthand how it impacts certain people and knowing how to show up to that is also important because you see
Yeah.
it all the time within families, even the different dynamics. One sibling may need to have somebody constantly talking about the lost person, while the other sibling maybe not so much. Maybe they're just trying to stay strong and stay busy to not go live in that pain because maybe they're not ready. And we get so focused on our own story and our own pain point that sometimes we forget that we all need different things and we're all dealing with it in our own way.
Yeah. That happened to me being Jeff's father, and my fiance Judy is not his mother, but he lived with us. And so that did happen to me where everyone was focused on me. and they kind of left her in the dust. And that was not good for her, obviously. But yeah, and it's just human nature, where, oh, how's Tom? How's Tom? Asking her how I'm doing and not asking her how she's doing, you know? Yeah. You mentioned, and I do want to get into the amazing things that you're doing. You talked about the communities that you have. What are they called? The support communities that you have.
Yeah.
Um, and they are virtual or online things, right? Groups that you hold.
Yeah.
Um, do you facilitate every one of those? Because I was looking at the frequency of what each one is, and that's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I do facilitate them. They are virtual, so they're pre-recorded. Um, it's kind of like when I did my master's program. It's available to people when they need it. So each week is basically a very long hour to 2 hour one PowerPoint session that's broken up by day. It's usually 2 to 4 slides of content. They can watch or listen to the entire week at once. They can go back. They can pause it as they go. If they're busy that week, they don't have to tune in on Monday for Monday's content. They can wait and turn it on whenever. If they miss a week, they can do double dose. It's drip formatted, so if you start today, you will only have 1 week of content available until next week. So it's so that you don't get the overwhelm. And
Hmm.
I try and treat it like a quote course, but along the way, I have some other courses that I created that pop up that are available free of charge, included with the membership. Different short stories that are included monthly. Um, we have our community chat. I am a night owl and have been for the last 7.5 years. So I'm online typically between like 11 and 2. So people can actually connect with me directly. And that's always nice. I don't want to schedule true like quote office hours because you never know when people are or aren't going to show up. And the last thing that I want to do is be in my own little divot of a hole, and maybe I need my little grief space for a little bit. And if I've already committed, they're not going to get 100% authentic me. So I'd
Yeah.
rather tell people that if I'm on, I'm on. If you want to chat with me, I will be happy to schedule a time, but I don't want to overcommit either, especially because right now I really want to focus on getting the disenfranchised pieces talked about. Businesses don't always offer mental health, and I'm trying to establish a huge resource page so that businesses don't have to pay for mental health. They can say, "We offer it," give my website link, and anybody that needs that support, whether it's through me or other resources, can go to my resource page, figure out what's out there, and then run with it. If a business wants to reimburse for an employee using any kind of mental health type services, then that's great. I've got ways to track how often people log in and how often they're engaging without exposing what they're engaging with. But more importantly, if they need a more licensed professional and not that grief coach, they've got those available to them as well. Because it's not always about the physical losses, it's the struggles with the disenfranchised of job loss, relocation, empty nesting, um, all of the
Mhm.
pieces. And a lot of times they overlap within the physical loss of a person, but other times it's just life transition.
Hello, friends. I just wanted to take a brief break here in the podcast to make you aware of a very exciting partnership that Heroes in Grief has just formed, and that is with Get Griefy Magazine. I'm going to let their founder and editor-in-chief, Kara Sanchez, tell you all about it.
Hey, Heroes in Grief listeners. Life after loss isn't easy, but it can be colorful and full of possibilities. Meet Get Griefy Magazine, a vibrant resource filled with inspiring stories of life after loss, expert advice, and voices from everyday grievers and thought leaders. Together, they're here to help guide you toward the side of life that's left to be lived fully and authentically. Dive into Get Griefy for free on Issue or snag a print copy on Amazon. Connect with us on Instagram at Get Griefy Magazine or visit getgriefymagazine.com to explore, join our thriving small business collective, or discover advertising opportunities. Let's embrace life after loss, boldly and together.
And now back to our episode. Yeah, I'm so on board with you about the workplaces and things. Not sure where I may be headed in some of those things. I'm more of a speaking and group person and that type of thing. So, but I really have a heart for the to be more proactive in the conversation. And so, I agree with you. It's hard. It's a hard nut to crack because a business may be very good on a reactional sense if something happens in their business, but it's hard to say, let me come in and talk to your people about grief and help educate them better about grief. And they're like, what? No, that's a stigmatized thing that they are like, oh, no, we don't need that, and without realizing, like you said, the wellness of the person means differences in productivity. And so if you can get that across to them, it may help them understand that. But oh my gosh, yeah, I was just speaking to someone else about this. I said, if you go to a workplace and you have an employee base there and you ask them, raise your hand if grief has affected your life in some way, you're probably going to get everybody to raise their hand. And if you ask them how many have dealt with it, you're not going to get so many hands probably. So it's like, people can just be educated better, whether they're a grieving person or around a grieving person, on how to better navigate this. And it's so hard to crack that sometimes in the workplace for sure. I'm on board with you on that. No doubt. So I'm looking at your site and there's so many good things there. Again, everybody, please go to thenakedgrief.com and you can look at things there, and a lot of resources there. Your support communities that you talked about. I was under the impression that you were live on there with people every time for those, but you explained about that, and that's fantastic. The Grief Garden series, unbelievable. I read those, and the first one, I could stop right there. It was amazing that you sent me, actually. And it's titled, hold on 1 second, I've lost my place. The Day the Garden Found Its Voice. And oh my gosh, the great imagery and everything, and how you applied everything to its proper places. And that, I'm not going to give away the story. It's free on your site, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to read that. And it really puts things in a great place for trying to explain the grief situation to, as you said, children and others who just need to understand it a little bit differently or a little bit better. But so do you want to elaborate on that series at all? I mean, they're amazing.
Sure.
I
Sure.
love how, and when you started talking about the ladybug, I was like, oh, this is where this kind of stuff comes from, right?
Yeah, so Hope's been around for a really long time, and she gets to really be showcased and featured in so many of the Grief Garden stories. Because, well, if we don't have Hope, our journey is just a lot harder. So, we kind of just need her, and and it's interesting because we all have different stages. We know about the stages of grief. We're told about it forever, but they're not really stages. We go back and
No.
forth and zigzag through all these different feelings all the time, and you could experience all the stages in an hour if
Mm-hmm.
you're having one of those moments. But the grief garden is about the emotions of the grief, and they become your companions. I have the chirpers, which is, I call them the chirpers. They're not all chirpers. Like, it's the hissing snake of guilt. It's regret the toad. It's sadness the cricket. It's anxiety the cicada. Anger the wasp. Um, the ones that we don't want to acknowledge are there. We shy away from those. They're loud. They're intense, right? But we kind of need them in our life, though, too, to acknowledge a lot of different things. We wouldn't be experiencing all of these feelings if there wasn't a love that was so intense in our lives that's now not physically there anymore. So we have to go through that. But while being accompanied by these companions, we do find our Hope the ladybug and our Love the dragonfly and Faith the butterfly. And we meet Grief the bear, who oversees the entire garden. And then I have all these nice little side stories of Persistence the fox, who just wants to become a part of the garden, or Slow the turtle, who knows that he needs to get to the garden, but he moves slowly. And sometimes the process of grieving is slow, and we need to be mindful of that. So it's different ways. And then I sent you Chance, and Chance is just a visitor that goes through the garden, but it's his own story of what the purpose of the garden is. I have another one of Promise the eagle, who lives actually above the garden, and he goes through two different transitions and two different stories, one of losing his wife and the other of being faced with that 40-year transformation of, do I begin again and rip out my talons and shave down my beak and pluck my feathers? Or do I let life just let my body slow down and go so that I can be with my wife? And he makes that hard decision to stay. But it goes through the entire journey of that to give us that reminder that sometimes we have to go through the hard stuff to get to the good again. We have to rebuild ourselves. We have to be like the phoenix that rises from the ashes, but since that's fictional, the eagle story is a lot deeper and resonates more solidly. So I've got over 20 short stories that I'm slowly putting out there on the pages, and to hopefully capture people a little bit more intensely and to make it more relatable. My vision is to be able to sell the hard copies and not the digital, along with a little, you got to manifest, with a little watering can with the first 5 or 6 characters in it. How great would that be for any grief
Sure.
educator, teacher, guidance counselor, therapist to be able to sit down with an adult or a child and be like, okay, dump out the watering can. Who's with you today? Why and how does that make you feel? When you're
Yeah.
relating through bibliotherapy instead of your personal journey, it makes it a lot easier to talk about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. The imagery and everything just is so, it brings in another sense as you're going through the grieving process too. And anytime you do that, you're getting more back on the stable ground that you need because you're um, so whacked out physiologically and everything else that it helps the grief brain and everything else to process better and get back on stable ground. So I love the imagery. I would encourage anybody to go there and look at those, and it can help you to explain things, and it'll help you to relate things that you may be going through in a way that people will find very effective because they're using their senses and things to understand it better, and it can help them for sure. Oh, love it. Love it. Amazing resources. I'm a resource person. So when I see things like that, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be using this big time. I love
Well, and
it.
as a grief educator, that means a lot to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. A grief educator, I took a course, and, life experience too educates you. And that's all there is to that. So, as we talk about all the time, you don't have to be a licensed therapist or things like that. You don't have to, whoever your person is that you can connect with as if you're a grieving person, whoever you can connect with and, find, uh, assistance along the way is that right person for you. So, we do these things. I did it just to get background because I knew I wanted to help people. I had no idea how. I just knew I wanted to help people. So I figured, well, and I did have some background already, as you know, but, you know, being specified in those certain things and learning from people who have been through similar experiences and all of that helps, and just have some background. I don't think you have to be a credentialed individual to help somebody through grief. I really don't, you
I
know.
think sometimes that can hold you back too, because you have boundaries set that you are restricted to. And when you're somebody who's experienced things, you relate, you can you can break through some barriers that aren't restricting you because you're a coach and not somebody with a lot of letters behind their name. At
Yeah.
least that's how I've kind of reframed it, because it bothered me at first that I didn't pursue a full licensure. And then as I was going through my second program at GCU for the life coaching, I was like, this actually makes sense, because I know what the restrictions can be, but I also know that as a coach, it's not formal. It's very informal. It's casual. I don't have to charge as much. And because of that, it becomes just dialogue and suggestion, not recommendations and prescriptions. It's very different, which is very cool. Um, can I move into the disenfranchised thing?
Absolutely.
So the other piece to all of this is I met last year, right before the last man that I loved, who was also the first man I loved, by the way. It's kind of a neat story. Met him in 1993, and we had a up and down love affair throughout the 90s, and we never officially broke up. He went away to Georgia, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. Cell phone died, car died, lost his bus ticket. He got stuck in Georgia, where he met his then soon to be wife and started his family. And once he was out of the Maryland area, I soon after met my husband and married and started my little family. So it's interesting. And he resurfaced, like, he was coming into town for work in Maryland around the same time that my husband had the aneurysm. And we had just connected on Facebook, and we were just kind of checking in on each other. And he saw what happened, and then was constantly checking in because my kids were a little younger than his, and he really related. And then things just kind of spiraled. So anyhow, while when he passed last year, um, that rocked me because I had known him for 30
Mhm.
plus years, and I had been on a journey to try and lose weight, and I paid for a lot of money for this program. And these people said, you have so much trauma inside of you that it's impacted all of your hormones. And no matter what we recommend, until you release this trauma and work through it, there's very little that's going to help you on your personal journey for weight loss. And I went, oh, well, that's good to know. It's an
Mhm.
expensive learning experience, but that's good to know. So along the way, I met Melissa Bishop, who runs Wholehearted Studios not too far from me. She is a medium, spiritual healer, spiritual and holistic healer. Um, and she taught me a lot with EFT tapping. She taught me a lot about just alignment and somatic movement, because I seriously don't move a lot. I like to sit at a desk and just work. And if you don't move, all of that trauma finds new places to live, and it
Mm.
sets all of your balance and alignment completely off. So having that spiritual side of things is just as important as expressing what you need and releasing what you're holding on to within all the different parts of grief. Well, I had an epiphany about 3 months ago when I turned on the TV and Friends was on, and I went, "Oh my gosh, I don't think any other show does this." Friends episodes have at least one character each episode exposed to some type of disenfranchised grief. And ironically, when they don't get the coaching and support that they need beyond what we are used to giving, we watch one of the characters completely implode in season 6 or 7, being Ross freaking out about his Thanksgiving sandwich, where he's then released from work for a while, put on a bunch of medications, and then they're worried about his rage, which is why they don't want to tell him about Chandler and Monica. And they, we see how they tiptoe around him. And the first time we meet Ross, what do we hear? Why? His wife's moving her stuff out. They're getting divorced. So episode 1, season 1, he starts with disenfranchised stuff, and it just escalates and it moves all the way through. And every single episode has a new way to address coaching behavior, personality behavior, how deep you got to go back. which also relates to EFT tapping and things like that. So Melissa and I doing this together, it exposes both of our strengths, some of our coaching expertise, and yet it's cinema therapy because it's so much easier to relate to characters rather than identifying these pieces in ourselves, which is also entertaining.
Yeah. Wow. A couple things. First of all, I think I'm going to get a little bell because ding, ding, folks, there it is again. All right. I communicated with you offline before we connected. I know that. And your cousin had told me about you, but we did not discuss the spiritual aspect of things. And again, every podcast, there is a thread coming in every single time, and people are being attracted to the situation or whatever through the universe because it's coming up again and again. And I am totally on board with that stuff. The second thing about friends, I did not know that. I didn't realize that, but that's so important for people to understand about disenfranchised grief and loss, really, because grief is part of loss. You know, what you experience is the grief when you've experienced loss. And it's the same elements of grief that you experience in a loss, life situations, whatever it may be, that are addressed in grief help. So it's important for people to understand that and realize that.
Well, and this is something that's interesting too. And this came up while I was doing more of the work for my communities that I realized that the light bulb didn't go off even when I was in school for this stuff. Grief and bereavement are two different things. When we hear grief, we always think that it's associated with physical death.
Mm-hmm.
Grief is everything else. Bereavement and mourning, that's what's related to the physical death part. And as a society, though, we're conditioned to think grief means grief. Like grief is the fact that somebody died. No, grief is anything dying in your life.
Mm-hmm.
You replace furniture and now miss the old stuff. That's grief. Your car breaks down and you got to get a new one. That's grief. You get forced out of one dorm into another. That's grief. Even if it's good stuff and you make better friends, it's still grief. It's a transition. You graduate. That's a moment of joy, but you know what? Now it's also a moment of fear. You're saying goodbye to years of study and work that you were doing, and now your life changes. It's grief. Retirement can be grief. It's the end of something and the start of something new. And we're not always conditioned to like change, good or bad. And
That's for sure.
it causes some grieving, and recognizing that and realizing that. And if we as a society can start talking about it more openly when we do experience the physical loss, and I'm not even speaking of the death part, when somebody leaves our life, chooses to walk away, that impacts us too. And people don't always know how to show up for the divorces or the breakups. And even understanding how to be present for that is important. We all need something different. We don't know how to ask.
Yeah. Wow. You mentioned your podcast. It's the raw experience. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
RAW. Does
RAW.
RAW stand for something?
Yeah. Real talk, authentic growth, lasting wellness.
Amazing. So they can find your podcast where?
Well, at the bottom of my website where it says follow us, it'll connect you to YouTube and our Spotify channel for the podcast. Um, it's a different icon than the Spotify uh music one because that'll link you to my music list or playlist. But Spotify has too many different things. They've got a creator site that is strictly podcast, and then they've got the music site. It can be very confusing, but there's different icons, and if you hover over it, you'll get to where you want to go. Um, we call ourselves the Raw Experience. Now, if you're going to look for us, it's actually the Raw Experience Circle. And we kept that because all of our communities are circles. It's the Grief Wisdom Circle, Spirit Wisdom Circle, a Raw Experience Circle. My Healing Hearts is just Healing Hearts, but Healing Hearts also includes Grief Wisdom. That's why it gives you 7 days of support. Um, because Grief Wisdom also dips into the teasers of what Melissa does with spiritual, because everybody needs something different, and being able to kind of figure out what works. That's why it's monthly, because maybe there's a month that you just know is going to be hard and you need that spiritual connection more than you need anything else. So knowing that it's there, it's good.
Yeah. And your podcast comes out weekly?
Yes, it's Friends Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right. Fantastic. My gosh, Karen, yeah, we're going to be connecting on some other things, and I appreciate that from you as well. And there's threads throughout all of us that we're meant to be together, united together, these kind of things and connections that develop these things. It's astounding. And even where we're from, obviously, but it's always mind-boggling to me. I love that. That's why I'm going to get a little bell or something. I'm going to get a sound every time it happens on the podcast, because people probably think I script this stuff and I don't. It just happens. And so I love it because it's like energizing to me. It's confirmation to me and all that. So I'm just it's kind of like, bing, that's another one, that type of thing. It's great. So what's your future looking like? What are you doing? Anything new, or is there anything that maybe we didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about?
Um, well, I'm working on sharing these digital stories with I'm trying to get the Aluna Network to accept them as a donation for their campers at Camp Aaron, which are nationwide throughout the US and every baseball city in America. Um,
Mm.
when I worked for the insurance company was when I learned about the Aluna Network, formerly Moyer Foundation. And while I was in grad school, I actually connected with them and did a very short stint of blogs for them, but I really wasn't sure which direction to go. And I don't know, we lost connection. So I did a couple, and I've always been really passionate about them. I did a couple of fundraisers in Baltimore for the local chapter. Um, always talk about them. And even when I was at the cemetery, whenever sorry, I keep looking around because I have all these little props that are nearby and none of them are close enough for me to grab. Um, when I worked at the cemetery, I learned about another platform called Courage Lion Foundation, and they were actually created by University of Maryland Medical System and their cardiac ward, where a bunch of doctors and one author got together and said, "Hey, when kids struggle with separation separation anxiety while they're in the hospital, or if they lose somebody, they need courage." So they created this cute lion named Duffy, and they created two different stories. And the way they did it is phenomenal because it's long on one side, short on the other. So if you're a little kid, you get big pictures and short little story words. And if you're an older kid, you get less graphics and more description. And it's just neat how it's the same story, but based on your needs, depends on how deep or shallow it is, so that it's not too much. But Duffy has a little pocket, so you can leave Duffy notes. Duffy has a little stone in his belly that's like a worry stone, so that you let all of your concerns go into Duffy's pocket instead of you holding on to it. He's got a big purpose. Anyway, Roberta's house, the local chapter for Camp Aaron, really wanted these courage lions, and learning about them, I think, also helped me go, okay, that's kind of the direction you want to go with Hope the Ladybug, not knowing it was going to lead to a whole garden, but
Mm.
being able to see all of these things and connect with them, and giving them a way to have maybe not the tangible lion at the camp, but the story, how the garden got its voice, and a way for different activities to be had at the camp, because it's only 3 days. It's pretty amazing though. It's free for any kids that are 6 to 18. It's a way for them to honor their person. They're supposed to bring in a picture, say their name, and then they go through activities and exercises to work through that journey a little bit. The challenge is if you lose somebody now in November or October and the camp isn't until June.
Yeah.
So my hope is they'll be able to use those books as kind of a in-between platform while they wait to go to camp and actually get with people that can truly help give them ideas and ways to express themselves.
Hey, maybe you could suggest to them that they do an indoor camp somewhere, during the
So
wintertime.
that's my big goal. I hope to be able to get big enough in supporting so many different community systems that we can inspire, like you said, a different way to do some indoor things, or even virtual camps, because parents need to know how to connect with their kids. And when you're connecting with your kids on their own grief level, it in turn helps us on our own journey. So that connection's huge. Just figuring it all
Yeah.
out. So I think that's my next big thing. It's going to be, how do I unravel that and make it make sense so that we can start helping more masses in different ways?
Yeah, right along the lines of you, that's for sure. I think people, I can't tell you enough. I think, I hope you're intrigued by what you heard, and please go to thenakedgrief.com and check out, first of all, the Grief Garden series, and you'll immediately see the impact that Karen is having, because it's going to have an impact on you. It's going to have and it's showing that it's going to filter through to everybody else too, because there's so many relatable things, and that is awesome. Karen, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for making contact to do that. I don't know if you knew, but I sent you a message through your website actually, before I connected through social media, and I sent a message on there. So when you got back to me, I was like, oh, maybe she didn't see that,
I
because
definitely didn't. So I've got to figure out that little quirk,
yeah, you better check out. Maybe you're not getting the messages for some reason, because that's the first place that I sent after Diane had told me about you. So I sent something right on there. So check it out and see how it goes. But let's talk offline here too after, and I want to talk to you about some other things. So maybe if it ever happens, and maybe just other things, but that story of being on the cruise ship and all those experiences on there, that could probably be a whole podcast in itself when you start bringing all that out and everything, if that ever comes to be. So maybe we could do that somewhere down the line or something like that. So, but anyways, there's enough in your content to do it otherwise. So thank you so much for coming on Heroes in Grief. And we'll have everything of Karen's information in the show notes, of course. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from her again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes in Grief podcast. If you'd like access to any of the links that we discussed in today's show, you can find them in the show notes. There's also a link there to support the podcast if you care to. And there is an email link for me there. I'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show, or what you thought about the show. You really can help out this podcast to get to more people if you subscribe, rate, or review it in whichever way your platform provides. Each week, Heroes in Grief is released on Sunday, so look for new episodes there. Thank you again for listening to Heroes in Grief.